This is the last lecture in the chapter Developing Through the Lifespan, and in it we're going to discuss briefly adolescence and emerging adulthood. We ended our last lecture on Piaget's stage formal operations, where uh, young people, age 12 and on, are um, becoming more abstract in their thinking. Uh, they're, they don't have that concrete stage anymore. They think outside the box. And along with this ability, many other things are happening during the adolescence time period, physically, cognitively, emotionally, and socially. So we're just going to discuss in intro a little tiny bit of this. And so let's start off by talking about uh, just the term adolescence, which is this time period until emerging adulthood. So say from 12 to 18 years old. And during this time, a very important component will occur, and that is puberty. And puberty is the physical things that happen to a person. So puberty is the physical things, the ability to reproduce, the growth, all the things, the hormones, the chemicals, everything that's happening. So when we refer to puberty, we're going to refer to two things. One is when puberty hits, you have your primary sexual characteristics which occur, and your primary sexual characteristics uh, are your reproductive organs. So when you hit puberty, boys will have their testes, girls will have ovaries. It'll be that physical thing that would allow a human being to reproduce. Along with that are your secondary sexual characteristics, which are fun things like growth spurts, being able to shave, hair on your, well, everywhere it seems, your face breaking out. All of that component is your secondary sexual characteristics. So it's an awkward time. People either, in retrospect, loved adolescence, loved high school, or they absolutely hated it, were so happy that it was over when they went into emerging adulthood. But nonetheless, it's a critical time for various reasons. Number one, that physicality, the puberty component of it. Along with that, you're forming new relationships with friends. You have a peer identity, peer pressure. Uh, no longer are your parents the most important, but believe me, they are still very important. And you, as an adolescent, uh, are hoping that they'll be consistent and have uh, that they will have certain things that they want you to do. You want them to be consistent in, well, let's talk about parenting styles because I'm obviously flubbing through this. Uh, Teenagers, they need a strong parent. And what we have is four parenting styles, and we have authoritarian, which is it's me or the highway, where you just do what you're told. There's no discussion. There's nothing to uh, bend the rules about. It's my way or the highway kind of thing. And then there's authoritative, which is the very best parenting style, where a parent has expectations of a child. They will be disappointed by certain aspects of their behavior, but they are loving and kind. They explain their reasonings behind actions, but they also, there will be consequences for a teenager. Another parenting style is permissive, and permissive is Yes, the parent still loves the child, they're warm, they're embracing, but they don't care what the child does. Whatever you want, you make your own rules, you do whatever you want, and children very often really don't want to just do whatever they want. They want someone to tell them, someone to care enough to set down boundaries and rules. Um, and the last style is the non involved parent who really doesn't love you, doesn't care, doesn't really, not involved, leaves you alone. If you're a child, you'd rather have that authoritarian parent than the non involved or the permissive because you want those boundaries set. So, even though a child at this time is breaking free of the parent, the parent kind of becomes the enemy. They still want the parenting style, and but their tendency is to listen to their peers over listening to their parents, and that's where their influence comes into play. So socialization is highly, highly important, and finding one's identity, their self-concept. Who am I? Where do I fit in this world? Because as a teenager, you're always experimenting, wearing lots of different hats. One week you might be a goth, the next week you might be a jock. You're trying on different hats and finding out where you are. Along with this social identity and expanding one's horizon, breaking free of your parents, so to speak, and the physicality of it, you also are going through a period of time where you have your brain is changing. Okay, so with adolescence, up to this point, when a child was in that toddler and they had some, synaptic pruning, and once they got past toddlerhood, those synaptic connections have been growing and growing, and all this wonderful stuff is going on in your brain, these connections, this, you know, uh, making you expand your mind. But when adolescence occurs, you have synaptic pruning, adolescent pruning. And so again, here we are with this, use it or lose it. But at this point, if some of these neurons, these connections, these synaptic connections are pruned off, they're not coming back. That's it. That's what you're left with. So, I mean, in one respect, it's great because you have some synaptic connections that are disappearing, that are being pruned off, and that leaves room in your brain for uh, new opportunities, so to speak. Uh, and you also have at this time, you remember in our conversation about neurons, we talked about the axon and how it gets the myelin sheath, the fatty tissue that's an insulator to the neuron, and it increases the speed, the efficiency of the messages. And when you hit adolescence, a lot of that myelin will appear on the neurons to make your thinking much more efficient, and you can expand your mind, such as having abstract thinking. So, uh, that is fantastic. But on the other hand, when you're in adolescence, your limbic system, which is so important for memories and emotions, and uh, that is like fully functioning. So when you're a teenager, everything is so powerful. Your feelings, that first love, nothing can beat it. Uh, but at the same time, your prefrontal cortex, which is your judgment, your thought process, your organization, making good decisions, is not fully developed. In fact, it will not be fully developed until you're 25 years old. And so this is this time during adolescence where it's all about feeling and emotions and experiencing, but that whole good judgment is bad, and hence why they created a movie like the Jackass movie. I remember my older boy, watching that. He's 28 now, so they would be like snowboarding off somebody's roof, in the middle of winter, making, feeling this gut feeling, but not really thinking it through and having good judgment. So, adolescence is a very difficult time. If you choose to take human growth, we will expand upon this conversation uh, tenfold. But along with that, at the end of adolescence, we have a new stage of human development called emerging adulthood. And this is around 18 to 29 years old, where people are not, everything is different now than it was. It used to be you when you were 18, you were an adult, you didn't go to college, maybe the 1940s and 50s. And then people started going to college and they got out at 22 and you would start working. As time and society and economics change, so has the world. So very often now, young people in emerging adulthood, this 18 to 29 period of time, they might have 7 jobs, live in numerous houses. They don't have much money. They may go back and live with their parents. Going to college may take 5 years, 6 years instead of 4. 4 is no longer necessarily the norm. You have returning students. Uh, Young people cohabitate. They're not necessarily getting married anymore. Women are more empowered. They're finding their own self identity and don't feel the need to get married. But these are very tough times now. It's hard to get by. It's hard to just be able to get your own apartment. Most emerging adults have to live with other people in order to have enough money to pay rent. They're driving lousy cars and they're not making the kind of money, and we don't have those uh, industrial type jobs, working in a factory where you could get a good job, have insurance, have benefits, and that doesn't exist in today's world anymore. So emerging adulthood is a new developmental stage. This is the end of what we're going to be able to do in this chapter. We will not be covering middle age and elder adults in this intro class, but please take human growth and development, and we will go there. So this will be the end of that, and next will be your quiz. All right, thanks a lot. Have a great day.